Welcome back to the Green Beans Go channel. It's your host, me. Today, we are going to look at some of the questions you guys asked. I put out a call to action and said, ask me gambling questions. Although I am not the brightest mind in the industry, I can hopefully help you guys in some way and in a way that is easily digested, because I know sometimes that's not the case in this industry. And you guys asked. You guys asked a lot of questions, so many questions that I had to lay them all out and organize them in a way where I can deliver them to you in a way that makes most sense to my brain. So this is part one. We're going to talk about 4 things today, and we're going to elaborate on those because I can answer these questions in under 3 minutes apiece. Part 2 is going to deal with topics of account priming and bottom-up betting. Account priming is how can I avoid limits? How can I look square to the books in order to make my accounts last longer? And bottom-up betting is handicapping, originating, making your own line or fair value so that way you can decide if a book is offering a good price or not. And then part 3, 4, and 5 are all going to be standalone questions. The first is going to be how I made a living sports betting. I don't like to talk about it. I don't think it's anyone's business. And I'm not saying that, disrespectful to Hip Hop Key Change 9960. I just think that there's a lot of envy and there's a lot of non-comparable lives, right? Like I don't live the same life as everyone else. So my $10 is not your $10. And I just don't think there's a lot of worth that always comes out of discussing the monetary implications of sports betting, which I realize is the implication of sports betting. But I will talk about how I made a living and give you my best advice in that realm. Part 4 is going to be 3 bets I regret the most. Aaron asks, what's the most units you've ever wagered? And I could answer that in 2 seconds, but it reminds me of 3 bets that stand out more than any others. They were all losses, of course, and we're going to talk about that as a little bit of a warning for you guys not to do what I did when I was young and naive. And finally, we'll wrap up the series with a topic of, is arbitrage and plus EV betting still worth it? There has been a lot of discussion by me about being limited on these books, and I think it's probably causing some cognitive dissonance to my viewers where they're like, well, you're talking about getting limited, but you're also pushing this service where I might get more limited. So yeah, I do think it's worth a conversation and talking about sort of the expectations you need to have going in. Enough of the roadmap. Let's talk part 1, which are these 4 topics. We will start with a look into my life. Paul Smith asks, what is your definition of a professional gambler? Gambler. Do you class yourself as a pro, given you make money from betting and sports betting education? And a question from the Seahorse, which is very similar. How do you explain to people what you do for a living? Do they understand it? So understand in the timeline, I was a full-time educator, a high school teacher. Someone asked what I taught. I taught high school English, 10th and 11th grade, 10th honors, 11th grade AP language and composition, and I also had an elective of creative writing and debate. I had 4 preps, 4 different things to plan every day. No, it wasn't the most fun. I also had a general 10. So I was exhausted. And while being exhausted, I would go to work, I would teach, I would come home, I had a daughter, and I would also be hitting arbs and playing promos and sports betting. It got to a point where my job was, there's a video. I talk about it for 30 minutes about why I left teaching on this channel. You can go watch it. It was a year and a half ago I made it. It got to a point where me doing that job at that high school was unsustainable for my personal life and my family's life. So I resigned. I was able to resign because of the money I had made in sports betting. Had I not been making money and saving money, I would not have been able to quit. So that is an interesting piece, and it's not a piece that you can tell people. When you are talking to adults and mature adults, and they're asking, oh, you're quitting, what are you going to do now? If you tell them you're going to do sports betting, you may as well tell them you're going to go sell drugs and pimp and be a pimp. Like, you can't tell people you're going to gamble for a living. They don't understand it, right? Even my mom. I explained to her. I talked about arbitrage. I talked about how I approach this, that I'm not technically gambling. I'm making sure that I bet guarantees. And she still did not understand it. And finally, I had to say, Mom, this is how much money I made. And after that, she never questioned me again. So how do I explain to people what I do for a living? And do they understand it? No, they don't. I want to get to a place where content is my main source of income and I'm not relying on sports betting. And there's still going to be people out there who don't understand that making content can also be lucrative. It's really just boomers, old people who don't understand the dynamics and want me to join the workforce and do it the way that everyone else does it. But to answer your question, Seahorse, I try not to explain to anyone what I do for a living. Paul simply put, anybody who makes their income from gambling is a professional sports bettor. I classify myself more as a content creator because in 5 years, that's the trajectory I want my life to be in rather than sports betting. I also think that an arbitrage bettor who calls himself a professional gambler is a little bit misleading because at the end of the day, they're not really gambling, but they still technically are probably professional gamblers. Question 2, will I do picks again? This was a question that was asked a lot. And the short answer is Dinger Tuesday. Yes, I will do Dinger Tuesday as long as FanDuel brings it back. And the reason is I enjoy it. It's fun, and I do believe that I have provided value to people. I have shown that I can be profitable. That helps me justify giving out these picks. So along that line, I do want to talk about the moral dilemma I have of giving out picks. Part of the reason I don't like giving out picks is because I think if you give out picks, you need to be providing value. And providing value doesn't always mean you are a winning bettor. I think there can be knowledge and expertise shared on the way to losing units that may be a net positive, if that makes any sense. But I'm not sure if I can provide a ton of value because I don't really study handicapping. I have a passion for it. I love it. But beating these books long term is tough for the average guy like myself. I've considered doing a series based on UFC betting, which I know is not everyone's favorite. I don't know why it is, but UFC is probably my most profitable sport. I didn't get into it until COVID, never watched it growing up, but I think there's a lot of value in certain markets of UFC bets. But instead of doing traditional pick videos, what I want to do is sort of set up a challenge where I say, can I beat UFC long term? And every week I talk very in depth about the units, about the fair value that I've priced it at, about what kind of edge I think I'm getting on these markets. I want it to be more educational, and I don't want it to be something that people will just blindly tail because they want action on something. I want to use it as an experiment and a learning opportunity to show people that sports betting and handicapping is difficult for the average guy or girl. So will I do picks again? Maybe, but only if I think I'm adding value or educating the viewer beyond the picks. Question 3 deals with the use of tools. My wife and I'm not ashamed to admit, we use tools. It helps. Hey, yeah. No shame in tools. Mitch Noel, that's clever. I like that name, says, what tool or tools do you recommend most for the casual looking to get more involved? I've seen you promote Avo, OddsView, and Outlier, among others. Would you recommend using the free version of multiple tools or focus on a certain tool's paid plan? Love the content. Keep it up. Thank you, Mitch. So what you need to understand, and we will talk about in our part 2 video, is Avo and OddsView are, for lack of a better word, the same. They both offer a top-down approach. They look at the market and they point out outliers, which is ironic because Outlier is a bottom-up system, or lines that have an edge to the consensus of the market. Avo and OddsView's mission is the exact same, but they operate a little differently. I use both because I find value from both. I prefer Avo for live. I prefer OddsView for its tools pre-match. And they also offer more markets such as soccer, which Avo doesn't have right now. So until one of them gives me a fat paycheck for being exclusive to their company, I'm going to continue to talk about both because I think both of them have value. And depending on the type of bettor you are and what you're interested in and how you like UIs, you could use both and be successful. Outlier is more of a research tool and helps you handicap the games and find edges in terms of game script, historical performance, and things of that nature. Now, there's going to be a class of people who say that Outlier is not worth it because you can never beat the books long term. Outlier is providing you information that the books have. You're never going to have an edge. That's why you top down bet. And I'm not going to sit here and say that's not true, but I am going to sit here and say that can be false. There are people who use Outlier and know what they're looking for in order to gain an edge and have proven that the data provided by Outlier can work. But Outlier is going to take more work. You are going to have to be someone who enjoys sports, who enjoys stats, who enjoys numbers, and you're going to have to do more work to determine if your bet is good by using Outlier. So if you're more math-minded and you trust that the market is efficient and you want to just get good value, maybe look at AVO and OddsView. If you like sports and you like stats and you want to try to find your own edges that you may be able to replicate no matter if the line is good or bad based on the market. But if you think you can have an edge by originating lines, then Outlier is a good option. And yes, always, always, always test the program, the software out with the free version. They all offer a free version. I would not pay for anything without testing it out. And one thing I've learned in this space, which people don't always discuss, is a lot of these businesses are startups. A lot of these businesses are very new and they're looking for people. And to tell you the honest truth, they're probably just waiting for the OddsJam paycheck. In other words, they're building a platform that someday a business will come in and pay them multi-millions of dollars for, and then they'll sell it off and they'll walk, right? Like that's kind of where we are in the sports betting world. A lot of these companies are really not trying to make a buck off of people like you and me. They're trying to grow a business. So find a way to get in touch with the developers. A lot of them have Discords. They all have their email posted. They all have a support link. Message them, explain your story, ask if you can test it out for free. The worst they can tell you is no.
I'm ready now. I got hydrated. I'm ready.
But if you do decide to sign up, use my link.
Third question, is crypto sites? This can be answered in one word. No. I don't use Bovada. I don't use offshores. They sketch me out. I think you're paying extra vig and juice in the uncertainty that you will ever get your money. I will say that it's become more reputable, but I had a friend who was using it in 2015. He made some money and he never got paid out. So that is something that hangs in the back of my mind. Again, I know that Bovada is reputable and they will do their best. They have a support staff. Like, you're probably not going to lose your money, but I personally have not ventured into the offshore crypto site space. The last question on part 1 was asked by John. He says, do you have a course or something? This is my course, John. This is it. I don't right now, and I'm not saying I won't ever, believe in a course. I don't want to profit off of the little guy and then have them turn around and risk their hard-earned money to try to beat multi-billion-dollar companies. However, I'm happy to share my expertise and wisdom that I've learned along the way and get paid by advertisers or sponsorships. My goal is not to make a quick buck from a course. My goal is to grow a brand that people respect and want to watch so that someday my Google AdSense is $2,000 a month instead of $200. I'm always open to questions. So if you have a specific question that you think would be covered in a course, go ahead and ask and I'll do my best to get to it. That does it for part 1. Keep asking questions in the comment. If I say anything that spurs another thought, I know I said this is going to be a 5-part series, but if it needs to be a 17-part series, then we'll do that. Again, part 2 will be about account priming and bottom-up betting. So if you are interested in that, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and the other things that YouTubers say to make them grow. Oh, it's so corny. We'll see you later. I love you.